Welcome to the Communication in Rett Syndrome webinar series, Course 3. I'm Andrea Etke again, a speech-language pathologist and one of the moderators of the IRSF Communication Guidelines Hive. As you may have already heard, the Hive is an online forum for professionals who complete all of the 3 of these courses. So if you're at this one, that means that you're at the end. Great job. The Hive is led by experts in the field who provide ongoing mentorship, resources, and education about communication in Rett syndrome. And again, I want to give credit to Teresa Bartolotta, one of the co-authors of the guidelines and the original creator of the content of this course. So this is the last installment of the webinar series, and our goal here is that you will walk away from this course knowledgeable about evidence-based strategies to use for development or the advancement in communication in individuals with Rett syndrome. And like the 2 previous courses, this one is offered for 1 professional development hour. And at the conclusion of this course, you can take a quiz, and upon successful completion of 80% or greater, you will receive a certificate of completion. The goal for you today is that you will be able to first describe low-tech and high-tech strategies to use with individuals with Rett syndrome to advance their communication skills. Second, that you would be able to list 3 ways to expand the vocabulary usage in individuals with Rett syndrome. And 3, that you would be able to define the term best yes and illustrate examples on how to develop this skill in individuals with Rett syndrome. And lastly, number 4, that you would be able to explain the importance of literacy skills for learners with Rett syndrome. Let's get started. If you don't already have a copy of the guidelines, you can order one here at rettsyndrome.org. There's a hard copy and a downloadable PDF copy. They're just $10, and these are great to have on hand to share with any communication partner that you might be interacting with, maybe school personnel, a co-treating therapist, family members, anyone. So in this session, we are focusing on Section 8 of the Communication Guidelines, and that section is on intervention. We will look at the general principles for intervention, how to create appropriate goals, and then strategies that you can use. So take a look at this image from page 50 in the guidelines. For me, this quote really drives intervention. Communication should be multimodal. We are valuing all forms of communication, not just one mode of communication more than another. I have a friend of a young child who was newly diagnosed with Rett syndrome, and he asked me, how do we get her to be more verbal? And I responded, the goal isn't always to be more verbal. The goal is for communication. And we talked for a few moments, and it was like a light bulb went off in this man's head. He really understood that we are valuing all communication acts, and that's what we are going to look at more in Section 8. So the principles for intervention when working with an individual with Rett syndrome is that functional communication is the goal. So what do we mean by that? Functional communication skills are those skills that enable us to interact and communicate in everyday life. So through interacting with others, an individual develops an awareness and understanding of cause and effect, connects experiences and language, learns concepts, all of which promote cognitive development. Communication also assists with the development of reading and writing skills, like through storytelling and talking about books, which we'll look at towards the end of this course. And then communication intervention has the potential to improve social communication and assist with the development of relationships between the individual and their family, friends, teachers, therapists, and people in the wider community. So those are the general principles of the intervention that we're talking about. So think about the different functions of communication, right? We've got communicative functions and communicative forms. And what do we mean by these two terms? Communicative functions, what is the purpose of communication? Well, greeting someone, protesting, commenting, describing, making requests, asking questions, answering questions. Those are all the purposes of communication. And the various forms that communication can take are gestures, facial expressions, vocalizations, manual signs, oral speech, picture symbols, written forms of communication, right? So a greeting, a communicative function, could be accomplished through a facial expression, like just smiling at someone, or it can be accomplished through a gesture, like waving hello, or it can be accomplished through a text message, hi, right? So the function, greeting, has many different forms. Functional communication for an individual with Rett syndrome can look like any or all of these communication forms. Maybe facial expressions, or using body movements like leaning towards a desired place, object, or person. Or a gesture like reaching or pointing or waving. Vocalizations or spoken words, even if those spoken words are repetitive. Looking at objects, people, pictures through eye pointing, and then using symbols, pictures, or text. These are all functions of communication. I like this quote featured in the guidelines. Developing a multimodal communication system individualized for each user, including gestures and facial expressions, a clear yes, no, or just yes, responses, use of no, low, or high-tech devices, when and where appropriate, is the most important goal for communication. So this quote really just encompasses and summarizes what I just spoke to you about, that we're looking for a multimodal communication system that allows the individual to use gestures and facial expressions, a clear yes, and it could look like no tech, low tech, high tech, or a combination of any of the above, but the goal is communication. Whatever the mode of communication, the goal for any individual with Rett syndrome is autonomous communication. And by that, we mean being able to communicate what you want to say to whomever you want to say it, whenever you want to say it, using any form of communication. To be able to communicate as autonomously as possible, each individual needs a communication system that allows them to generate their own messages in a range of situations using a range of communicative forms that are valued by their communication partners. So that's our goal. That's our overarching goal, is autonomous communication. Generally, intervention should start early and be lifelong. However, it's never too late to start communication intervention, and it's never too late to provide opportunities that can improve the individual's quality of life. I know personally I have worked with young women in their 20s and early 30s that don't have a set AAC system in place or reliable communication systems, and it's never too late to start. Intervention goals and strategies should be reviewed regularly, as any individual's capabilities can change and develop over time, right? Life situations and communication demands are ever changing, and communication partners are responsible for being adept at recognizing when it's time to modify an intervention goal. Lastly, intervention should take place in a naturalistic context so that skills that are used frequently throughout the day can be taught and practiced. Naturalistic environments also make it possible to involve regular communication partners in the intervention, which is so important, so that they can learn how to use and reinforce the new skill. So we've already talked about how communication has many different functions, And we communicate to request, to ask a question, to comment on what's happening around us, to share information, to be social. All of these communicative functions can take different forms, right? My example was I can say hello by waving, by smiling, by texting hi. But for an individual with Rett syndrome, all of these communicative differences exist as well. So it's important that whatever AAC system is being used is able to provide all of those different communication functions. We must, as the communication partners and instructors, be able to provide access and instruction for an AAC system that is tailored to these different uses. An AAC system should be able to incorporate any or all of these pieces, regardless of whether the AAC system is aided or unaided, right? So that should help drive that choice and those decisions of what AAC type is being used at that moment. If the individual needs to be able to communicate multiple different functions, but they're only having access to this unaided system, which is their body, maybe that's not enough. We're not providing enough support for all of those different communication functions. So unaided AAC, like I just mentioned, it means not using any external tools to communicate, but just relying on one's own body to convey messages. So a facial expression, gestures, body movement, vocalizations, these are all unaided forms of AAC that an individual with Rett syndrome or anybody might use, right? But aided AAC means there's the addition of another tool used to communicate. So think communication devices, high-tech, soft-tech, or low-tech. Unaided communication, you're just using your body, but aided communication, you have something else in addition to your body that you're using to communicate. So a person with Rett syndrome may use any combination of AAC as their system. They might use direct selection to either touch a screen or eye gaze to select icons on a screen. And we're going to talk in more detail about that. An individual with Rett syndrome might use low-tech AAC. It's just important that whatever that is, maybe it's a pod book or like this folder system that we see pictured here on the left, it should be it could be a backup for an individual who has a high-tech system. So, for example, I have a friend of mine who lives down the road and she's 7 and she's a young girl with Rett syndrome and she loves to use her Tobii Dynavox with eye gaze at home, but when she's at the park, her mom brings some low-tech tools with her, like some yes/no cards or printed pages from her Tobii Dynavox in a binder so that she can make requests and comments and all of those other functions of communication when she's on the go. So that low-tech aided AAC supports her high-tech aided AAC when it's not around. An individual with Rett syndrome might use partner-assisted scanning. The communication partner here, pictured in the picture, this gentleman is pointing to the different symbols and saying what the text is associated with that symbol and is waiting for acknowledgement from what is probably the AAC user, the woman with the gray jacket on. This can only be used after establishing a best yes. So you are communicating with an individual and knowing what that yes is. We'll talk about that in a few slides. And aided AAC can be used for modeling, like aided language stimulation or aided language modeling, again, later in this course. This is a question that I've heard a lot, so I figured let's just cover it real quick. Aided AAC in school. So I've gotten this question a bunch. Can the same device be used for both communication and education purposes? So, for example, I used to support a high school student, and we were in her civics class one day, and the civics teacher wanted all of the unit vocabulary programmed into her high-tech device. She used an eye gaze device. And I said, sure, we could put all of that vocabulary in there. That's great fringe vocabulary that she might want to access, of course, to talk about the lesson, to use in other conversations. But the teacher also wanted this student to be able to select the vocabulary words to answer questions on a quiz. And so the way that we went about that was that this student had access to that full vocabulary to communicate about it, but she wasn't only using that to be tested. She wasn't only using the high-tech device in the classroom to be tested on the unit vocabulary. So it was just a little bit of conversation and education with the teaching team that an AAC device is not just for testing purposes. It's not just show me this answer or show me the right vocabulary word associated with this definition. The purpose is for communication, and then education purposes can also be fulfilled through the same device. So therefore, we've talked a little bit about what the basics, the general guiding principles are for intervention. So let's talk a little bit about setting goals for intervention. So it should include the development of nonverbal communication, low-tech or soft-tech, and high-tech communication strategies. So we're looking at all of the above because it's important to recognize that individuals with Rett syndrome present with a range of abilities, right? There are those that can speak in sentences and some who are able to say a few words and others who are completely non-speaking. Regardless, all individuals benefit from some form of communication intervention to improve their participation and quality of life. And to achieve this, communication should be developed across multiple modalities. For example, those who are non-speaking may benefit from a speech-generating device, like we were just talking about, a high-tech device, along with coaching on how to use body movements. There was a teenager that I used to work with Rett syndrome, and I know she used a body movement like she would walk up to the fridge and she would lean into the fridge. And that was her indication to her mom that she wanted a snack. And then her mom would guide her to her high-tech device and then ask her, what do you want for a snack? Here's your page of snacks. Here, give me your request. So in that way, that teenager is using two different modalities. Both of them are being highly valued and both of them were intervention goals that we worked on. Maybe you've already heard of this on how to write a SMART goal, but in case you haven't, this acronym is to be sure that the goals you're working on for that individual are appropriate. So S stands for specific. The more specific the goal is, the easier it is for all members of the team to understand what's being achieved and how to reach it. M stands for measurable. The goal should have a clear way of being measured. A stands for agreed upon. All members of the team should agree that the goal is important and how they will work on it. Nothing's worse than sitting in an IEP meeting and writing a goal that I care about but nobody else seems to care about, or vice versa, right? So really strive for that collaboration to come up with goals that are agreed upon, and that they're realistic. The goal should be achievable within the resources that are available, knowledge and time, according to the team that's working with the individual. And then T stands for time-based. It should be possible to reach the goal in a defined period of time. Nothing pains me more to see so-and-so will improve expressive language skills by 90%. I don't know how. I'm still improving my own expressive language skills and for the rest of my life, right? So we are looking for something closer to the example that's pictured here on the slide. To increase attention to modeling, Mina will attend to aided language modeling when engaged in an activity with 3 different communication partners during one school day. This will be shown by looking in the book when the partner is pointing. It's very specific, it's measurable, it was agreed upon by the team, it's realistic, right? Using aided language modeling, responding to it, that's an important thing. It's realistic to hope and expect the student, Mina, will be able to do this. It's time-based during one school day, and we know the conditions that it's going to occur on, right? When the communication partner is pointing. So this is a good goal that you could hold on to as a model when you're writing your own goals. Examples of appropriate goals, just a few more things about this. For some individuals with Rett syndrome, a goal might ask them to maintain a body movement, like walking towards the fridge. Like I mentioned before, we could write a goal that Emily will, walk to the fridge and, lean into it to gain her mom's attention for a snack, That might be appropriate for some and not for others. For some, developing or maintaining a gesture like reaching or pointing or waving for those who already demonstrate some voluntary hand control. Developing or maintaining sound production for individuals who already produce sounds voluntarily. Another young girl that I know of enjoys vocalizing and has some clear sounds, and her speech therapist works on sounds with her one of the days that she sees her, and that works for her, and that wouldn't work for some. And then developing or maintaining spoken words or sentences. Again, not for everyone, but for all, appropriate goals could be developing or maintaining eye contact, like looking at a desired object, individual, or a picture. And for all, it would be appropriate to work on developing and maintaining the use of graphic symbols, photos, and text, right? Because that supports AAC use. So we'll look more at that. If an individual already has a reliable yes/no response, this can be used in different situations for various reasons. So say you're on the go with your individual with Rett syndrome, and you need a quick way to understand what she wants to do. Do you want to look around Claire's for some new earrings? I need a yes or a no, right? Or maybe you're at school with her. Do you want to sit near your friends in the gym? I need a clear yes/no. Developing that yes/no response is important for all individuals with Rett syndrome. So some individuals may not be able to say yes or give a conventional manner like a head nod. So the best yes is an alternative way for an individual to express the yes. I have seen this look like her turning her head to look at me straight in the eyes, or the communication partner straight in the eyes. I have seen this look like blinking once for yes, or holding that blink a little bit longer. I have seen this look like moving an arm for indicating yes. So whatever it is, right? It's just a consistent answer to yes. To establish a best yes, and we're going to look at a video of this in a second, the communication partner must first observe an individual carefully to see how they respond to liked and disliked activities. And then once a best yes behavior is identified, all the communication partners get informed so that they can all recognize it and then reinforce that behavior. So let's now take a look at this video example. This video is Selena swimming with her mom, and this video is being shown with permission from the family. So as you watch it, consider what we were just talking about. Selena's mom is working on establishing a best yes with her daughter, and she's doing a highly motivating, liked activity, which is swimming in the pool, and she's going to ask yes, no, and she's looking and watching for that best yes and then reinforcing it. So let's take a look.
You're having fun here, Selena. Yes or no? Yes! Yes!
Great. So in this video, I saw mom ask, "Are you having fun, Selena?" And then mom flips to the yes, no icons, and she looks at Selena and sees that Selena is looking at yes. So mom points to it and says, "Yes, you're having fun." And so this is a great activity to establish and practice best yes. Her mom is engaging with her in an activity that she clearly enjoys and knows the response is going to be a yes. So she's reinforcing, I saw you look at this symbol that means yes, and then I pointed to yes, and then I said yes out loud and reaffirmed it, right, with that like high energy kind of feeling. So this is a great way to establish a best yes in just one example.
You're having fun here, Selena.
Yes,
You're having fun here, Selena. Yes! Yes! Yes!
So language interventions should begin with exposure to a robust vocabulary, including core and fringe words, so that potential for communication is unlimited. And by exposure to a robust vocabulary, I mean that the individual is not expected to use all of those words right away, but rather communication partners are using the words to model vocabulary as they talk to the individual throughout the day. In this way, they are experiencing the vocabulary in use and making associations between the meanings of the words and the symbols and how to learn how they can be used in communication. So a good AAC system will include words that cover a range of ideas, interests, and meanings to be able to be flexible enough to allow for changes related to age, language, development, environment, food, etc. Right? And just one point about aided language modeling, partially what Selena's mom was doing, right, in the pool. This is a strategy in which the communication partner speaks while pointing to the symbol in order to support that receptive vocabulary or language. So as the partner, you would select the vocabulary on the individual's AAC system, whether that's high-tech or low-tech, as you talk. And this is a great way to expose the individual you're working with to new vocabulary and to also use repeat exposure. Here's an example of a 36-symbol universal core board created by Project Core. You can check out their website. It's pictured below. Core words are those that are used most frequently in our conversations on a daily basis. So core words the goal is to provide a flexible way for AAC users to engage in many types of conversations through the use of core words or core vocabulary. So this core board could be used in aided language modeling, right? So it could be printed and it could be used for on-the-go communication. It could be set up real big as a poster in a classroom for the teacher to model what he or she is saying when talking with the AAC users or the individual with Rett syndrome. It could be a page set on a communication device. There's many different ways to use core vocabulary. Like I said before, really check out the Project Core website. This is just the 36th board, but there are different amounts of core words, and the arrangements are different too, and it's a free resource and you can print them off and use them as needed. Fringe words, so we've got core words and fringe words. Fringe words are those that are used in specific types of conversation and they occur less frequently. So maybe words about cooking or a trip to the hospital. That's not vocabulary that we use in our everyday communication, so those are called fringe vocabulary. A little bit more on vocabulary. The picture on the left is an example of an activity board, and it has vocabulary related to a specific activity. So most of the words are fringe, right? Like music, dance, instrument. This board might be helpful to increase participation in a particular activity and to help develop grammar and syntax by encouraging the use of multi-word combinations. So maybe as the communication partner, you're pointing to, I like to dance, right? So you're modeling I and like, which are core words, but then you're adding dance because it's specific to the activity that you're doing and it's on the individual's activity board. And then the picture on the right is an example of a context-based board, which is similar to an activity board, but designed for a specific context or environment. And these boards contain vocabulary that allows for greater generalization and can be used for regularly occurring events, right? Like, this is the board that we always use when we're at school, or this is the board that we always use when we're ordering food at Culver's. Maybe you're already familiar with this term, visual scene display, or VSD, but in case you're not, let's describe it for a minute. VSDs can be useful as a starting point when introducing high-tech AAC. And these displays photos or pictures that depict scenes, objects, or people are created and hotspots are added. The hotspots are high interest areas that contain vocabulary items. In the VSD on this slide, you can see that it's a painting scene, right? If the individual wants to talk about painting, they might select the hotspot, which are outlined in the red boxes or the red circles. They might select the one that has the yellow and red paint, and that has a pre-stored message that will speak, "I want to paint." Again, the VSD might just be a starting point for an individual getting accustomed with AAC. Although there's no evidence to support one type of language system over another, individuals and their communication partners should try out different layouts and weigh the benefits and drawbacks of each type. So the drawback here would be not access to a robust language system, only access to these 4 pre-stored messages on these 4 hotspots. But the benefit could be that it's highly contextualized, and because it's a picture and it might be a preferred activity, could be very engaging for the individual and promote communication. Our goal should be always to provide access to robust vocabulary. So the only times when we're really wanting to limit options is when we perceive that the individual is at risk of frustration, or maybe there are access issues, say the eye gaze system is just not functioning at the moment, or when there has been limited success over the last 12 months with the trial of a robust language system. Otherwise, our real goal is to provide access to robust vocabulary. All right, so let's talk about access. Access methods vary according to the individual's abilities at a given moment. So first we have a direct selection. This can be used when the individual has a way of directly activating the AAC device. This could be through touching with a finger or hand, or the operation of a switch, or through eye gaze. It's well documented that eye gaze works for most individuals with Rett syndrome, but keep in mind there are other body parts that can be used for direct selection. But eye gaze can be fatiguing, and it doesn't work in every environment, like in the water or sunny spaces, right? You can't use the eye gaze technology to access the device in the water, not yet at least, and it sometimes doesn't work great when the sun's out. So another form of direct selection is scanning, and that can be used when the individual is able to operate a switch, but is unable to use direct selection. And we will look more closely at that on the next slide. So like I said, eye gaze is a well-documented access method for most individuals with Rett syndrome. However, there are some caregivers and individuals or professionals that report difficulties with eye tracking technology for some with Rett syndrome. So what we hear sometimes is that maybe are individuals who are ambulatory able to use eye tracking, and that's a yes, right? You can just think about how to set up the device in a designated spot, maybe where that individual often passes by. If you remember a few slides ago, I gave you the example of the girl, young adult, that would walk over to the refrigerator and lean into it to let her mom know that she wanted a snack. She was a young adult who was ambulatory with Rett syndrome, and she used an eye gaze device, and it would sit at her kitchen table, and she would go to it or go to it with the attention of her mom or dad, and then sit down and use it. And so it worked very well. You just want to make sure that the device stays charged like anytime and accessible at all times for someone who might be ambulatory. And then make sure that the communication partners are aware of what the signs are that individual might have something to say and maybe needs help getting to the device. I get asked sometimes, can individuals who wear glasses use eye tracking? And that's a yes. Sometimes the lenses might have a reflective coating that could interfere with the eye tracking technology. So if you're seeing difficulties there, maybe check the lenses and see if their prescription can support a lens without reflection on it. We also get asked if individuals who have trouble controlling their head can use eye tracking, and that's also a yes. You just need to figure out a supportive position for that individual. And if you need help, always referring to our friends in occupational therapy and physical therapy for positioning assistance is a good idea. And then also, if you didn't know, eye tracking technology can enable the individual to control not only their device, but their environment, which is pretty cool. So we now can control like lights on and off, Alexa, TV on and off, and so that's pretty cool. So scanning, just coming back to this for a second, scanning on a high-tech device looks like sections of the screen being highlighted or scanned through, and then the individual uses the switch to select the button or area that they desire with the intended message in it. So that's scanning. And then partner-assisted scanning, we talked about that too. That's when there's a communication partner, like pictured here. The communication partner is holding up different alphabet choices on a see-through board or an e-trans frame and waiting for that individual to look at the intended letter. This could be done where the partner is sitting next to the individual, and it can also be where the partner is sitting directly in front of the individual and then holding up the see-through board, and then that way the communication partner can gaze through the board and see where the person is looking. Either one works great. Other access methods, touching or pointing. You might recommend our friend Annie here from Course 1. Annie liked to touch the iPad to make selections, and being able to touch or point to access AAC should not limit the variety and complexity of communication. So Annie had access to a robust vocabulary, and I believe here she was using an activity page because she had horse riding vocabulary that was linked up for that page and being modeled by her horse trainer. And then another access method that could be helpful would be a head pointer. Might be something to look into if you've tried all of the other access methods and they're just not working or effective. That also could be a different access method to try out. Okay, so let's look at video 2. We have Selena again and her mom. Pay attention to her mom as the communication partner, of course, and try to see if you can identify which strategies her mom's using that we've gone over so far in the course.
Selena.
So we have read
Mermaid.
The Singing Mermaid.
Okay, so we have
Mermaid,
read The Singing Mermaid,
and now I would like to know, what do you think? And
Trying
we're
to
gonna
get an answer with
try
the
to get
podbook.
an answer with the podbook. Yeah?
Oh, you're moving. Are you moving?
Oh, you're moving. Are you moving?
Okay,
You're
so
moving.
here is the podbook.
Okay, so here is the
Nami is
podbook.
going to sing to
Nami is going to
read
sing
to you.
read to you.
And you're going to
read
tell
them
me
out
yes or
to
no.
you, and you're going to tell me yes or no.
So,
Right.
I think
I think
not
that
good,
not
okay.
good.
Is it one of
Okay.
these?
Is it one of these?
Or no?
Yes or no?
No.
No.
Don't like words? Bad,
Don't like words.
Naughty,
Bad.
sad?
Naughty. Sad.
No.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Is this book funny?
Is this book
fun,
funny?
cool, noisy?
Fun. Cool.
Is it one of
Noisy.
these?
Is it one of these?
Yes, you've got here, yes?
Yes.
And
You've got here.
no.
Yes. And here you've got no.
Funny, fun, cool,
Funny.
noisy.
Fun. Cool.
Yes.
Noisy. Yes.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Look. No, okay.
Look. No. Okay.
Clever, silly,
Clever,
cheeky,
silly,
crazy
cheeky,
story.
crazy
One of these?
story.
Yes
One of these?
or no?
Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Is it clever story?
Yes. Is it clever story?
Clever mermaid.
Clever mermaid. You're right. You're right. That was a
mermaid.
clever mermaid.
You're right, straight away.
You're right. Straight to.
All right, so we see here mom is using partner-assisted scanning on Selena's pod book, which is aided AAC. It's not high-tech, right? It doesn't talk when she presses the buttons. And she's going row by row or column by column, and she's giving Selena 3 or 4 choices in each column, and then a chance to say, is the one that you want in this column yes or no? And she's waiting to see Selena look at the yes on the left or no on the right. And then when she gets to the one when her mom says what she's thinking, clever, Selena looks straight up at her mom's eyes and gives her a really clear yes. And so in this video, you see that her mom acknowledges Selena's communication acts and confirms that she understands her, and she really values Selena's answer, right? She really says, yes, she was clever. I saw you say yes. Yep, you looked right at me. Yes, she was clever in that book. So it's a good example of the strategies that we've looked at for communication intervention, using a best yes, using a, it's not really low tech, I guess it's comprehensive. There's a lot of vocabulary in that pod book. So there's a robust vocabulary system and aided language modeling as well, and partner-assisted scanning. So really her mom hits a lot of those topics that we talked about.
Selena.
So we have
Selena.
Rett.
So we have Rett.
Okay, reading and writing are closely related to communication, and we just want to touch on this for a moment because it's a really important aspect of intervention for all individuals with Rett syndrome. There is considerable interest in promoting literacy for all. All individuals have the right to receive well thought out literacy instruction and to help them progress as far as they can on their literacy journey. So that's our goal. That's our job. It's been suggested that individuals can only truly be autonomous in their communication once they're able to spell and write words to supplement any other language system they use. And so in order to do that, we need to teach them how to write and read, right? So all individuals with Rett syndrome should be exposed to activities that develop phonemic awareness of print, some sight word vocabulary, and writing skills. It is never too early and it is never too late. Anyone can benefit from literacy instruction. Being exposed to reading, writing, and storytelling is beneficial for the development of communication, language, and literacy skills because they're all intertwined. Shared reading is an activity that's appreciated by many individuals and their communication partners. Books and stories can be adapted in many ways to suit the individual's preferences, interests, and needs. So depending on the individual's current level of literacy, emergent or conventional literacy instruction should be applied. So if the individual that you're working on is an emerging reader, right? So they're not doing reading on their own, but they're emerging in their understanding of literacy. That means that your goals for that student should be focused around understanding print, that print has meaning, the alphabet, that letters represent sounds, developing phonological awareness, those letters make sounds, and then when we string those sounds together, we make words, and the communication skills required to interact with others about reading and writing, that you could read something and you can make a comment about it, or I can read something to you and ask you a question about it. Goals for conventional literacy instruction, so that would be individuals with Rett syndrome who are reading, consist of more formal literacy instruction, and that might follow something like a regular school curriculum focused on syntax, semantics, aspects of grammar. And these lessons can also be adapted for individuals with Rett syndrome. So another cool thing is that individuals with Rett syndrome can be encouraged to create their own narratives or stories, and you can co-construct these. This can be really fun. So as the communication partner, you can ask open-ended questions or do fill-in-the-blank sentences or use visual story maps, and together the two of you can create narratives or stories together, and that's a great literacy activity. And then it also works on or addresses communication too. So for a list of free literacy resources, check out Appendix 5 in the Guidelines Handbook. And one way of learning new skills that we just want to point out, I've mentioned a few times, is modeling. So watching other people and being able to imitate their actions, that's modeling. So we've called it aided language modeling, aided language stimulation, aided AAC modeling, augmented language. They all mean the same thing. It often follows a developmental framework. So you're beginning with like one word expression, you're adding 2 words and expanding as vocabulary grows. So in this modeling, the adult is teaching language and providing vocabulary by pointing at the symbols while speaking. And the symbols could be in a communication book, they could be on a device, they could be on a low-tech or high-tech device, and then the modeling might be just happening in real time, right? Like aided language modeling, or even video modeling. You could record yourself composing a string of words on a high-tech device, and then watch that video with the individual with Rett syndrome, or have somebody else do it, have a sibling do it, and record it and use that video for modeling purposes. So that's just one final note on intervention. So in conclusion, our guidelines end with a list of the statement and recommendations that were agreed upon by the expert panel that created the guidelines. We also include a glossary of terms, some resources for assessment, and the references that are in the web series 2, the one that you just watched. Some resources for developing and tracking goals, a link to useful websites and organizations that you might want to check out, and then free resources and advice sheets for AAC and literacy. So if you're looking for more information on what we covered today, like vocabularies, tools for developing yes/no, partner-assisted scanning, literacy, definitely be sure to flip to the back and take a look at those free resources. So you've reached the end of course number 3, and at this point you want to go to this link, rettsyndrome.org/for communication professionals, to take the quiz 3 associated with this course, and then check out more program information. Upon successful completion of all 3 quizzes, you're so close, you're almost there, you'll be invited to join our peer-mentored, privacy-compliant online forum where we foster real-time, real-world discussions to advance your work with individuals with Rett syndrome. In this network, we share ideas, brainstorm solutions, and offer suggestions to one another. We host coffee chats on specific topics pertaining to communication and Rett syndrome, and this network is available at no cost, for any professional that's just completed all 3 of these courses. So great work, and thank you for taking time to learn more about Rett syndrome. Thank you for your continued work on improving your knowledge and skills so that you can help individuals with Rett syndrome improve their quality of life and reach their maximum potential. We hope to see you in the online forum, and details will follow once you receive your certificate of completion. Thank you.